Today I will be studying two different books, one being an original English book and one being a work in translation that started in a different language and was then later translated over to English from a foreign language. The first work I'll be studying is a play written by Oscar Wilde called The Importance of Being Earnest, while the work in translation that I'll be studying is called The Elephant Vanishes by Japanese author Haruki Murakami, which is a collection of short stories, of which the short story I will be studying is called The Second Bakery Attack. To begin, The Importance of Being Earnest is a play written by Oscar Wilde, written originally in English, which follows two main characters of Jack Worthing and Algernon Montecrief, as they both use the alias of Ernest to help themselves court the women they like and do other things that they want that is separate from their own native names. Eventually, they are both caught for using this fake alias to do what they want, and they then have to traverse the lie they created to be able to still be able to marry the women that they like. This play very heavily carries themes of culture, wealth, and truthfulness in 19th century England, as well as how many rich people were seen to behave at that time. This was primarily because the play was written by Wilde to be a satire of life in England at that time, and was used mainly to make fun of how rich people only seem to do things for money, and was essentially just a satire of how life was in England for the rich at that time. The play was written by Oscar Wilde, who was born in 1854 in Dublin, Ireland. He was gay, and that made him an outcast to many people, as being a homosexual at that time was seen as a very negative thing. He was able to see firsthand the opulent lifestyle that the rich in his region lived, and this play is a satire of how he saw that lifestyle to be, as well as how many people in that region saw the wealthy of their culture at that time to live. Similarly, The Elephant Vanishes was written by Haruki Murakami and is a collection of various short stories, one of which is The Second Bakery Attack, which is about how a couple seem to have nothing in their life to really do, and they're starting to starve when they decide to rob a bakery for food so that the husband can both feed his family as well as find some sort of fulfillment in his life. The book was written by Haruki Murakami, who is a Japanese writer who was born in 1949 in Japan. Since a boy, he has been interested in American literature and inspires that in his own work to blend with both his native Japanese culture as well as the foreign American literature that he has loved so much throughout his life. He uses the American literature very seamlessly in with his own Japanese culture to create stories that he feels are his own. Both of these books follow the global issue of power and how power affects and changes people throughout their lives to only want more power. In Act 1 of The Importance of Being Earnest, Lady Blacknell, who is the caretaker of the one who Jack likes, named Gwendolyn, about his eligibility to marry Gwendolyn, happy that he has money, property, etc. In the beginning, when she hears that he does have a lot of money, have a lot of property, and has a lot of the features that most rich, wealthy men in England at that time had, she seems to be very pleased with how he is and seems to be leaning towards approving of the two getting married. But when she finds out that he does not know his parents, she begins to lean back and does not have as much of a positive attitude towards the marriage. Then, when she finally asks him about his birth, and she realizes that he was left abandoned in a train station in a handbag as an infant to be picked up by anyone, and he ended up being adopted by someone else, she is out. She is very angry about the whole thing, and she seems to see Jack in a very negative light. She's quoted as saying she is bewildered and how Jack is a social indiscretion and can't be recognized in society solely for something that can't be helped, but is rejected and does not make any Gwendolyn more powerful because she rejects the marriage proposal because this kind of birth does not make Gwendolyn more powerful. Due to the fact that his birth does not fit into the societal norm and shows how power hungry the British society is at that time. Solely because of the fact that Jack was not born into a typical conventional family as most rich were in the region at that time, many people would see Jack as much less of a person, especially the wealthy people, solely due to the fact that he is not like them and does not fit into their societal norm. This demonstrates the global issue of power because it shows how Gwendolyn is now not able to marry Jack solely because he was not born into a position that would make Gwendolyn more powerful if they did marry. It shows how people with power only seem to want more power, and this is seen when many of the rich people in this story seem to only marry for money and power and not for actual love, except for the love between Jack and Gwendolyn, as well as Montecrief and Cynthia later. Similarly, in the second bakery attack by Haruki Murakami, it follows a couple who are seeming to be starving in their own home with little to no money to their own name. And in their starvation, the husband reminisces on an experience he had as a child, where he and his friends decided to rob a bakery for food, and he hasn't seemed to have any sense of fulfillment like that since. So when the wife looks at the empty pantry, she decides that they should go rob a bakery a second time, so that the husband can find that sense of fulfillment again, as well as being able to feed themselves. They drive for a long time before being able to find a bakery, which is truly just a McDonald's. But they decide it is enough to gain that sense of fulfillment in the first place, and they go in. They enter with a shotgun and a handgun, and they hold it up to the workers there, and they take over 60 hamburgers, tying up the workers and then driving away, which is where we begin in pages 40 to 49 and lines 13 to 46 of the excerpt that I chose. After this robbery, the couple makes their way down to an abandoned parking lot and sits on top of their car eating the food that they had just taken away from the McDonald's. The husband closes his eyes, finally enjoying that sense of fulfillment that he has not received in a long time, and he drifts off to sleep, where he describes his dream as looking down at the sea, where the volcano was gone and the calm surface and little waves ripple around him. This demonstrates the lack of effectiveness in a work of translation because, to most American readers, looking down at the sea with no volcano and calm little waves will not really have any sense of importance to them. But if one really wants to see what Haruki Murakami meant in this kind of book, you need to look at the culture of Japan. The largest city in Japan is Tokyo, which is around central Japan, and its skyline is dominated by Mount Fuji, which is a volcano that has surrounded that city for a very long time. So, when looking at it from a Japanese viewpoint, being out in the middle of the ocean, which is a very defining characteristic of Japan, where the volcano is gone, typically means that someone is far away from home or something is kind of alien to that person. So, once the husband finally finds that sense of fulfillment in being able to rob that McDonald's, and he describes his dream as being where the volcano is gone and calm little waves ripple around him, that describes how this sense of fulfillment that he has not felt in a long time is very alien to him and strange, as he has not been able to feel it since he robbed the first bakery as a teenager. This demonstrates the global issue of power because it shows how power gives people a feeling that they've never had before and demonstrates why, once they receive that power, they will do nothing but try to get more power in the first place. This is seen in the fact that Japan has a very low crime rate, where robberies are fairly rare. So when he does something that's so uncommon and is typically looked very down upon in his society, at least more so than in America, he feels that sense of power and something that he hasn't been able to do in a long time at both being able to provide food for his wife as well as being able to have the power of really being able to take whatever he wanted in that restaurant in the first place. Despite both texts coming from vastly different locations and backgrounds, as well as authors and cultural standpoints, both manage to effectively convey the global issue of power and how it changes people. Both books manage to show how power makes a person want nothing but more power, as well as how the fact that they cannot simply enjoy what they have and only want more and more demonstrates how power will corrupt a person until they only want more power in the first place. This is seen in The Importance of Being Earnest, where Lee Blackwell rejects Jack's marriage proposal when when she finds out that he really wouldn't give any more power to Gwendolyn and by default Lady Blacknell herself due to his birth circumstances, which is something that he cannot help in the first place. As well as the husband in the second bakery attack, where he gets any sense of power from being able to rob that restaurant and being able to provide for his family. Both of these show how power really doesn't do anything to help people and only makes them want more power until it's really the only thing they think about. In conclusion, both the books, the second bakery attack in The Elephant Vanishes by Haruki Murakami, as well as the play The Importance of Being Earnest uh, by by Oscar Wilde, both manage to effectively convey the global issue of power and how power affects people by making them only want more power and not letting them enjoy what they have in the first place. Seen in how characters in the books The Elephant Vanishes and The Importance of Being Earnest only seem to want power so that they can take advantage of other people to climb the societal or economic ladders that they've been climbing for their entire life. Thank you.